Good morning. We're working with Pirkei 5 today. And Pirkei 5 is a series of mostly anonymous statements meant to lead us down the straight and narrow path of a good life. Many of the statements are presented through say it, David. mnemonic device, which is using numbers to take you through historical events and character traits. And in this case, the numbers are 10, 7, and 4. One of the few Tanaim we meet in Pirkei 5 is Yehuda ben Tema, who lived in the late 2nd century to early 3rd century CE. He's mentioned only one time in the Mishnah and twice in the Tosefta. The Tosefta is a supplement to the Mishnah. It parallels the Mishnah and is also divided into the same 6 Siddharim, but is a commentary or companion to the Mishnah. Yehuda ben Tema was one of the last of the Tanaim and was referred to as Judah and his colleagues and as a master of the Mishnah. The other 2 Tanaim mentioned in Pirkei 5 are Ben Bagbag and Ben Heihei. They were scholars of the late Zugot or early Tanaic period. It's possible that the 2 names really refer to one person. In any case, the scholars were most likely converts to Judaism or children of converts. They may have studied with Hillel because in other sources, Ben Bagbag's teachings were presented in the name of Hillel. The name Bagbag refers to the numbers 2 plus 3, Beis plus Gimel, equals 5. 5 is also a significant number in the Torah because when our father Avram received the name Avraham, the letter He, which is the number 5, was added to his name, signifying the conversion of our forefather. Ben Heihei also signifies the special number 5, the Hebrew letter He, that was added to Avram's name by Hashem. So we see that the nicknames Bagbag and Heihei allude to a conversion to Judaism.
So, good morning, everybody. Baruchim Haboim. I think that I was told that there's some difficulty with Zoom this morning. So, if you're listening to us on Zoom and you can hear and you're not muted, just say hi, good morning. And if not, we are streaming live on Facebook this morning too. So, those people who are watching on Facebook will be able to record the video and we'll post it on the shul website. So, hopefully others can get to see it as well. But, okay, to start today's Mishnah, we're starting on the 5th chapter of Pirkei Avot, as Mindel said. And if you are following along in your siddur, if you have the Art Scroll siddur, it's on page 570 in the Art Scroll Hebrew English siddur. So the Mishnah says, V'asara ma'amaros nivra ha'olam, that the world was created with 5 statements, 5 utterances. Uma Talmud Lomar, and why is that important? Why is the Torah coming to tell? What is the Torah telling us by having those 10 statements? The world could have been created. After all, God could have just made one statement and the entire world could have come into existence, because we know that the world really exists only in the mind of God. So the way that Hashem created it, he could have done it with 1 statement or with 10 statements. And so the Mishnah is asking why, because we know that the Torah is not a storybook. It's not coming to basically give us parables and so on. It's a prescription for life. And so if God chose to make 10 statements to create the world, there's a reason for it. And why is that? It says, because Shema Abdinis Olam, because Elali Paramin Harashoyim, to exact more punishment from the evil ones, Shema Abdinis Olam Shenivra Basar Mamaros, who destroy the world, which was said in 10 statements. And by destroying the world, it means that when they deny the existence of God and the fact that God created the world, they're destroying themselves. And if you destroy yourself, we have a principle that if you save one soul, it's like saving the entire world. And conversely, if you destroy one soul, and that soul could be your own soul, it's like destroying a world. and also litain sachar tov letzadikim, to give greater reward to the righteous ones, shemekayim es olam shenivra ba'asar mamaros, who bring the world into existence basically with those 10 statements, and those people who value the word of God and understand that God created the world, so then their reward is 10 times as great. And if you actually take the time to go into the Parsha of Bereshis and count up how many times it says Vayomer, how many times it says that God said, right? And Vayomer Hashem Yehior, right? God said, let there be light, so, and so on. It's actually only 9 times. And here the Mishnah says it's 10. So Rambam says, Bereshis, the first word, Bereshis, is a statement as well. So that makes the 10th time.
It says failure to connect to server.
Yeah, apparently we're having trouble with Zoom, so those who are listening on Facebook, so you're getting it, and the rest we'll have to catch up with you. Next Mishnah, Asara Daros mi Adam ad Noach. So Hashem is, the Torah here is telling us some history, basically, that there were 10 generations from Adam Harishon, from the first man, from Adam, until Noah. Why is that? Because to let you know how patient, basically, is God. Because things were not going so well with the early generations, and yet God waited 10 generations from Adam until Noah, because to tell you how patient Hashem is, Shekol Adoros Hayu Mach'isinu Boyin, because all the generations between Adam Harishon and Noah, all of these generations were making God angry, basically, until finally God reached the point that He brought the waters of the flood. So that took 10 generations, and from that point, Asara Doros Minoach ad Avraham, and there were 10 generations from Noah to Avram. So between Noah and Abraham, 10 generations took place. Why? Again, to show how patient was Hashem, because because we know what happened after Noah. So you had the Tower of Babel, and had all those other situations, and you had rampant idol worship throughout the world, and yet all the generations made God angry, but He waited, right, until Ad Sheba Avram Akiba Olav Sechar Kulam. And this is a kind of an interesting, ironic sort of statement, because we're saying that 10 generations were evil, and along came Abraham, and he accepted the reward for all of them. So what does that mean? He accepted the reward for all of them. So that's like, I don't know if anybody's watching on TV that. I read this morning in the online that Michael Jordan was the greatest player ever, but a good part of his success was the offensive scheme called the triangle that was invented by the coach Phil Jackson. And they said that if Carmelo Anthony had played with the triangle, he would have been as great as Jordan. So it's sort of not quite the same idea, but Avraham Avinu, if the people along the way between Noah and Avram had been more righteous, then all the reward that they would have received is what Avram Avinu got, because he eventually brought the idea of the one God to the world, and he accepts the reward for all of them as if they would have received it themselves. Next, the Mishnah says, Asar nisyonos nisnasa Avram Avinu olav hashalom amad bekulam, that Avram Avinu was tested. He had 10 times that God tested him. And of course, why did God test Abraham? God knew Abraham's character. God tested him because He wanted Abraham to know the strength of his own character. And He wanted also to provide lessons for us to see that if your faith is strong, you can withstand the tests. Why? And so the Mishnah continues this, Lahodia kama chibaso shel Avram Avinu olav hashalom, to let you know how much God loved Avram. So what were the 10 tests? So there are different versions of the 10 tests, and some of them are actually, almost all of them are listed in the Torah, and some of the commentaries have a list that includes also the Medrash that says that Avram was thrown into the fire by Nimrod and so on, but Rambam doesn't accept that. Rambam accepts only the ones that are written explicitly. So what are they? So the first one is Avram is instructed, Lech lecha, leave, right? Leave your father's home. So, and that's kind of an interesting one for those of us who are communicating with each other through Facebook or hopefully through Zoom or whatever, because when you leave your parents' home, so all of us who are descended from immigrants, right? And we all are, and in my case, in Mindel's case, it was our grandparents that left when they were young people. They left their families and they came to the United States, never to see their parents again. So you can imagine what a huge test that was for Avram Avinu. That was the first one. And the second one says that there was a famine, right? That the crops did not yield. So that was a big test of Avram's faith, that he still maintained the faith during the famine. And then when they traveled, so the famous story that Sarah was taken captive, right, by the Pharaoh, and Avram told the Pharaoh that he was her sister, and that was a big test for Abraham. And then when he had the battle with the 4 kings, when he had to save his nephew Lot and so on, the next one was his marriage to Hagar. Right? Avram did not want to marry Hagar, but he knew that he was supposed to be the father of the nation. And Sarah said to him, listen, it seems like it's not working out between the two of us, and you need to live up to your destiny. So it's up to you now. And Abraham went along. He listened to what his wife said, and he did marry Hagar. And then it's the fact that he had his bris milah at a very old age, right? Well, Abraham was 99 years old when he had his bris, and you can imagine what that was like. You know, years ago when the Russian Jews began coming to the United States, so a lot of organizations sprang up. One of them was called Bris Avraham. It was actually an offshoot of Chabad, and what they did was they made brises for these people who were not permitted to have them as they were growing up. And I participated as a sandik for one of these brises. The man was in his middle 30s. I guess he was about my age at the time, and there he was taking this tremendous test of his own faith to go ahead and have a bris milah. And I remember he lay down on a table, like what a massage table would be, and the surgeon was standing at the other end of the bed, and I held the man's hand, and you can imagine what that must have been like. He did have some painkiller, but still. So Avram did that without the benefit of painkiller at the age of 99. And then again, Sarah was taken captive by Abimelech. And then the next one was Avram was instructed by Sarah to send Hagar away, right? Once they had their own child, Yitzchak, and Sarah saw that Yishmael was being a bad influence on her son. So now Abraham had to send away Hagar. We don't know what his feeling about Hagar was. We certainly know that he loved his son. He loved Yishmael, and he was told to send her away, and he did, right? And then the fact that his son had said to send away too. And then the last one was the Akedas Yitzchak, the famous the binding of Yitzchak, his son, his only son basically, that was going to be inheriting from him, and God instructed him to sacrifice him. So those are the 10 tests that Abraham was forced to undergo, and he withstood them all. And so it's basically lessons for him to let him know how strong his own faith was, and for us as well. Next of the 10s, the Mishnah says, Asara nisim nasu lavasein b'Mitzrayim v'asara ala yam. There were 10 miracles that took place for our forefathers in Egypt, and 10 took place on the sea. So the 10 that happened in Mitzrayim is that it says, Eser Makos Hevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu Al Mitzrim B'Mitzrayim V'Asar Al Yam, that these 10 that took place for the Jews in Egypt, for the Egyptians and the ones on the sea, that the plagues that were brought onto the Egyptians did not afflict the Jewish people. And then when the Jews crossed the Red Sea, it describes various different things that took place during that time. And then it says, Shenemar v'yanasu osi zeh eser pomim, and also it says, Asar nisyonos nisu avusenas hamakom baruch hu b'midbar, that the Jewish people tested God also 10 times during their sojourn through the desert. Cheryl, I see you. Can you hear me? Cheryl, Cher, do you hear me? Wave to me if you hear me. Okay, so it seems like maybe some people are hearing us. I'm not really sure on Zoom. But anyway, so because the pasuk says Vaynasu osi zeh eser pomim, and we know all the different times people complain and so on, and God was tested himself, so to speak, and of course the tests were withstood, and eventually the Jewish people came around. So next it says, Asar nisim nasu l'avosenu b'beis hamikdash. There were 10 miracles that took place in the temple itself. The first one, it says, Lo hipila isha me'reach basar kodesh, that the aroma, the smell of all the sacrifices being burned never once affected the pregnancy of a Jewish woman in Yerushalayim. V'lo esriach basar kodesh me'olam, and the meat of the sacrifices never spoiled. You know, of course, they had no refrigeration, and some of the sacrifices were eaten on the day that they were slaughtered. Some of them went into that night and the next day, and it was a hot climate. It's very possible that the meat would have spoiled, but it never did. Lo nira zvuv beis hamit b'chaim, and in the temple, in the courtyard, it was like a slaughterhouse. There were so many animals being slaughtered, and there was never an insect, a fly, that interfered with the work. V'lo era keri l'kohen gadol b'yom kippurim, and the Kohen Gadol, we know he had to be on Yom Kippur. He did the entire service in the temple by himself, and he had to be maintained in a state of purity. So we know that he was separated from his wife for a period of time, and it never happened that he had an emission the night before Yom Kippur. V'lo kibu geshamim eish al shal atzei hamaracha, and the mizbeach, the altar that was in the courtyard of the temple, was in the open air, and it never happened that it rained and put out the fire. And the smoke went up straight, in a straight column, and it never happened that the wind interfered with the smoke, that it was pushed to the left or right. And there were certain offerings that were very time dependent. For example, the Omer. The Omer was cut, we know, on the second night of Pesach, and since it was prescribed how it had to be done, there was a certain maximum quantity that had to be cut, and it had to be done at the right time exactly. And it never happened that grain that was cut had any imperfection in it, and that's important because they could not have gone back and done it again. It had to be done one time, only one amount, and the Omer was very important because that's what allowed the old grain to be used. That's where we had this idea, Yashan and Chadash and so on, so that the grain from the current year's crop could only be used for baking bread and so on once the Omer had been brought. So if there had been a problem with it, it would have been a serious issue. The next one, it says, Omdim Sfufim Meshachim Ruvachim, that the Jews, when they came into Yerushalayim to the temple on the holidays, they were tightly packed, standing up. They were tightly packed close together because there were so many of them. But when it came time to bow down, there was enough room for everyone to have his own dalet amos, or basically 6 feet that a person could bow down. And that was important because this way no one could overhear the confession that his neighbor was making. So that was one of the miracles. And never happened that a snake or scorpion, which were present in Yerushalayim, but they never damaged anyone. No person said to his friend, I don't have space to stay in Yerushalayim. Next, I'll just go quickly through it. Asar Devarim Nivru B'Erev Shabbos Ben Hashmashos. There were 10 items that were created on Friday afternoon at the twilight time, and these items were created then. And the Mishnah is telling us that they were created this time because they appear miraculous to us, but because they were created during the 7 days of creation, they actually are naturally occurring. And what are they? Pia Aretz, that's where the earth opened up to swallow Korach and his gang. Pia Be'er, that's the well of Miriam. Pia Son is the donkey of Bilam that spoke to him. Hakeshes is the rainbow, right? Demonstrating to us that there'll never be another flood. Haman, which was the food that the Jews ate in the desert. Hamata was the staff of Moshe that performed the miracles. Hashamah was that worm that was used to cut the stone to build the Beis Hamikdash. Haksav, Ksav is the actual writing on the luchos, on the tablets. Hamichtav, the fact that they were written in such a way that you could see it from 4 different directions, and that's pretty difficult to figure, because if you've ever used a stencil to make a letter or something like that, you'll see that there are certain places that it's connected, because if it was all disconnected, it would just fall through the paper. So the fact that these letters were suspended, that's certainly a miracle. And the luchos themselves, the tablets themselves. V'yeshamrim afa mazikim. Some say, even when they say mazikim, it could mean these are the demons, but also could mean your own evil inclination. That was created at that time, because we need that, right? Without having some ego or some desire for wealth or so on, which are considered to be not such great characteristics, but we need them, because without that the world could not exist. Ukvuraso Moshe, and the grave of Moshe himself. Ve'elu shel Avram Avinu, and the isle which is the ram that came to Yitzchak's rescue, right? That Abraham used that slaughtered that animal. V'yeshim, and some say af tzvas b'tzvas asuya, and some say also the tongs with which the first tongs were made, because we know that metal instruments have to be made with other metal instruments, and they have to get hot in order to forge them. So how could you make the first set of tongs, because you had nothing to hold it by? So he says these original tongs, God made those tongs, and then the first blacksmith was able to use them to create other tools.
Okay, so my turn?
Your turn.
Okay. Mishnah 9, at least in my edition here, Koren, Pirkei Avot, so it says, Mishnah 9, it speaks of the 7 characteristics of a sage. So David will go through the list in a few minutes. And when I was looking at those characteristics, I noticed down here at the bottom of the page that there's a mention of some more characteristics, and those characteristics are listed in Tanis. Okay, so I went to Tanis, and Tanis meaning special fasts. So I went to the Sefer, and I looked up to see what were the additional characteristics of the sages, and there was a footnote that mentioned Rav Ashi and Ravina, 2 great scholars, and they were Amoraim, and they edited and sealed the Gemara in the 4th century CE. So Ashi and Ravina are not in today's piece, okay? So I had to turn to a different Sefer, and that's where I saw that although it's characteristics of great sages, that it's plugged in the middle of information about special fasts. So you'll see why I was pretty interested in that. I thought it was pretty ironic that that's where I wound up, was in special fasts. Rav Ashi studied under Rava. When Rava died in about 351 CE, Rav Ashi went to study in Pumbedita, and all of the names that I'll have now, the towns, are all in Bavel, because most of the Jews had left Eretz Yisrael. They were in Babel. So he studied in Pumbedita under Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak. And then 4 years later, this teacher died again. Rabbi Nachman died. And Rav Ashi and his friends went to study in another yeshiva in Nahardia, where Rav Papa had an academy. Eventually, Rav Ashi had his own academy, and it was in Mata Machasia. And he had a friend, Ravina, who came to help him run the academy. Rav Ashi introduced many important ordinances in his academy, and the city of Mata Machasia became a Jewish spiritual center of Babylonia. There's, of course, a lot more that we could talk about for this, regarding the scholarship of Rav Ashi and Rava, but we'll just turn to the two famous sayings that complement the 7 characteristics of a sage that David will talk about. So, the qualities mentioned by Rav Ashi and Rava are found, as I said, in Masechta Tanis of the Talmud. Tanis deals with special fast days and the practice and prayers for those fast days. So what are special fast days? In Masechta Tanis, special fasts are mentioned for such misfortune as lack of rain. I mean, everybody needed rain. And you couldn't turn on the weather station and find out when it's going to rain. Anyway, the weather station is usually wrong. But we had to turn to Hashem for rain. So if there was a prolonged drought, the people had to pray a special prayer. And it could be 1 day, 3 days later, 3 days after that. So eventually, special fasts came to also be used for what is called pestilence. And pestilence refers to plague or contagious disease. So I wanted to read the words of Rav Ashi and Rava, so I turned to Tanis 4a. And so here it is. Rav Ashi says, a rabbinic scholar who is not as hard as iron is no scholar, meaning a sage must hold strong conviction and must not bend under pressure. But a few lines later, his friend Ravina says, even so, a person must teach himself to be gentle, for it is said, therefore remove anger from your heart. And this means that to be a fine person, a scholar must have a respectful attitude and exhibit some gentleness. So back to special fast days. Why was I kind of excited that I wound up in special fast days? So as I read over the statements of Rav Ashi and Ravina, I was curious about the special fasts. I read a little bit about the special fasts and how they operate. And then certainly COVID-19 would rival any ancient plague that the Tanaim and Amoraim said special prayers for. And I don't know if you noticed, but it was in the news sometime like in the middle of March, and Rabbi Lau, who had been the chief rabbi of Israel many years ago, and I think also maybe of Tel Aviv, he asked the Israeli public to hold a half fast on March 25th, which was the eve of the first day of Nisan. This was a special fast in the spirit of our forefathers, and you see that the saying of Rav Ashi and Ravina led me to Masechta Tanis. And because I was in Masechta Tanis, I remembered that I had seen this announcement to fast for half a day. And this, of course, the purpose was to heal our brethren that contracted the disease and to ask Hashem to prevent the rest of us from becoming ill. And so I thought it was nice that I found a link with Tanis and the sayings of Rav Ashi and Ravina, and then today's Parsha, which talks about the good characteristics of these sages.
So the Mishnah says, this will be the last one that we're going to do today. The Mishnah says, Shiva Devarim Begolim, V'Shiva B'Chacham. There are 7 characteristics or character traits of someone Golem, and Golem is translated as a boor, and there's 7 of a wise person. And what are they? Chacham eina medaber b'fnei mi shehu gadol mimena b'chachma. A wise person, if you're in the room with somebody who's a little smarter than you, it's better to stay back a little bit and let that person speak. Ve'eno nichnas l'soch divrei chavero, and he does not interrupt. And we've probably all seen this so many times. Some people are talking, a little group of people talking, and someone comes over and jumps in and has to get into the conversation and maybe even distract from what was been said. So that's not exactly a great characteristic. And he also, when he's not quick to answer. Sometimes if you're asked a question and it's a little bit complicated, take your time and think about it, right? And so when he asks a question, he asks something that's relevant to the topic being discussed, right? So if you're in a lecture or in a shiur and a certain topic is being discussed, don't bring in some extraneous information, because maybe the purpose that you're doing is maybe you want to learn something, but maybe you're trying to embarrass the speaker, right? Because he prepared a whole lecture on this particular topic and he's got his mind focused on that, and you ask on something totally unrelated. That's not correct. And then he says, "Ve'omer al rishon rishon val achron achron," and when you're asked a series of questions, answer them one by one in the order in which they were asked. And if you did not hear this statement from someone else, and it could be that you have an original thought of your own. So you say lo shamati. So it shouldn't be assumed that what you're saying is information you learned from your teachers. It should be, if it's your own original statement, say so, that it's your own original. Moda ala ms. And if you make a statement or a comment and someone comes along and shows you that what you said was in error, admit it. Don't be afraid to, because here the Mishnah is saying that's a wise person who is willing to admit that he had been in error and now he's going to correct the error. And the reverse of all these traits is with the golem. And I'm just going to give a couple of examples of some of these traits that we can see how our forefathers and our foremothers also did. So the first one is when it's talking about not to speak when someone who's greater than you is prepared to speak. So you have an incident where in the Mishkan, in the desert, which was the temporary Beis Hamikdash, sacrifices were brought, and the sons of Aaron and Aaron himself were the Kohanim, and they were supposed to conduct themselves in a certain way, and one of those was that the meat of the sacrifices was supposed to be eaten at a certain point, not to let it stay over too long. And this particular time, the sons of Aaron, Isamar and his brother, were doing the work, and they let the sacrifices stay too long before they ate them. And Moshe was upset. He was angry then. And it says Vayiksaf, that Moshe was angry. Vayiksaf Elazar v'Isamar b'nei Aaron, that Moshe was angry with Elazar and Isamar, and he rebuked them, and he said, Madu alo achaltem asachatas b'makam hakodesh. Why didn't you eat the sacrifice in the place where it was supposed to be eaten? Ki kodesh kodeshim hi, because it's of the higher level of sanctity which had to be eaten in the temple precincts itself. And so he's saying to them that they did not conduct themselves properly. But if you read on a little bit, they don't answer, because apparently their father was there, Aaron was there, and they felt it wasn't respectful that they should answer. And so, if you continue a little bit further, it says, Vaydaber Aaron and Moshe. So now the boys, the sons, stepped back, had respect for their father, even though they themselves were the ones being rebuked, but their father was there, so they allowed their father Aaron to answer. So that's an example of not speaking when someone greater than you is there to carry the ball, so to speak. And then in terms of answering questions as they're asked, so you have the situation where Rivka is being interviewed, so to speak, by Eliezer, right? He said Abraham Avinu sent Eliezer to look for a wife for his son, and he asks her, "Do you have food for our animals, and do you have a place that we can stay? And so she responds to him with that in that order. She says, yes, we have plenty to eat and we have a place to stay. That's illustrating the proper way to answer questions, that you answer them one by one in the order in which they're asked. So I'm hoping that next week we have the technical problem of Zoom worked out somehow or other. It's not something that's local to us here in Boca Raton. Apparently this is going on in Zoom all around the world right now. So it's not just us that are having the problem. And those of you who did stay with us and listen, I can't see your faces, I do see your names. So I'm hoping that you did get something from it, and that next week we'll have it sorted out. And if you're with us on Facebook, so I'm assuming that one is working well, and we will be posting it to Facebook as a video that can be seen over again, and it'll be on YouTube and it will be on the shul's website. So we thank everyone for participating with us, and we hope you'll join us again. Next week will be the 6th chapter of Pirkei Avot, and then following that, Shavuos is coming during that week. So traditionally, Pirkei Avot was learned during the 6 weeks between Pesach and Shavuos, and we're going to be keeping that tradition. So we'll do it next week. It'll be the 6th one, then will come Shavuos, and then we'll see, maybe we'll think of something to do for the rest of the summer. But anyway, thank you all for joining with us, and we hope to see you again soon.